Women's Soccer Show. I'm Allie.
And I'm Sara.
And we are back again for another week of women's football. How you doing? How's your week been?
Very, very busy, actually. At some point, maybe we should talk about collegiate soccer, because I've been doing a lot of commentary, and it's just a blast, and maybe we can highlight it at some point. But this weekend was the best. The start of the WSL, NWSL chaos. We get to talk about it all. I love this moment of every year. It happens in the spring too, but flipped, where the WSL is ending and NWSL starting. And those two moments, they're my favorite moments. They're on par with me of like a tournament starting. It's so much fun. And I'm really pumped for the topics we have today. Should we just say them?
No, because I just want to do a very quick shout out. It is football related, but Manchester Lionesses, who I play for their 9-a-side team, their 11-a-side team played their first FA Cup match this weekend.
Hell yeah.
And they won 7-1. They are through to the next round of the FA Cup qualifiers. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the Manchester Lionesses Yellows, because you guys are doing us so proud and we are so excited to see your FA Cup journey continue.
Tell people what the Manchester Lionesses are too, if they don't know.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, the Manchester Lionesses is a completely inclusive, wonderful football team that has many tiers, from beginners of people who've never kicked a football to those aforementioned Yellows. It was set up by our founder and friend of the pod, Helen Hardy, and it is for women and non-binary players, and it's just a wonderful organisation, so I'm so happy they're doing so well.
I love it. Perfect way to kick this off. Shout out to Manchester Lionesses Yellow from me as well. All right, what's on the docket today? We're going to talk NWSL, some big moments this weekend, both off and on the field. Alex Morgan's jersey was retired. Chicago moved stadium. We'll get into all of the news, but really what we're going to dive into is Orlando Pride, and is there trouble in Orlando? They dropped 5-2 against the Chicago Stars, Chicago's second win on the season. We're going to talk all about Orlando this week, and I'm very excited about it. And then, of course, we're going to talk WSL, the opening weekend, the first WSL match for London City, and so much more. Anything I'm missing, Allie?
Of course, we're going to go around the world. There was some amazing games that happened in Germany and France that we're going to quickly hit on, because those leagues are already kicking off being crazy, even though it's the first week.
All right. Without further ado, let's get into it.
So we are going to start on Sarah's side of the pond and talk all things NWSL. And I think one of the biggest news points that came out this week is Alex Morgan's San Diego Wave jersey has been retired. Now, I want Sarah to talk about this a bit, because anybody who is mainly English knows that only really happens when a player dies over here. We don't just do it randomly.
Wait, what do you mean? When a player dies, then nobody can wear that number anymore?
Only for very certain people.
You have to be a great player for that club and then also die.
Yeah, basically. So, like, for example, if we when Ellen White, for example, left City, they weren't retiring the number 9 in her honor. Yeah. So it's very rare that they would do this in this country.
It's a rarity in the United States, too. The clubs and teams and organizations try to do it before the person passes away, so that they can bring the player back and celebrate their career. Look, in the history of sports in the United States, it happens on a rare occasion when that player is just so iconic to that club that you can't imagine somebody else in that number. It feels a little different here with the NWSL, because the NWSL is so new. San Diego is so new. I mean, the club's only been around for a few years. So it feels a little odd, but then again, I kind of get it. Alex Morgan's a very iconic player in the entire fabric of, United States women's soccer. You're not going to retire her number at the international level, because then we'd have no numbers left for players to wear, number 9 would be retired for Mia Hamm. So many numbers would be retired. We just get up into players would be wearing in the 70s or the 80s or whatever at some point. So we can't do that. So I get it. I get it, I guess. Is she the most iconic San Diego Wave player that will ever, grace us? No, but she's an iconic player, and I'm happy for her. And I did shed a tear. A couple TikTok edits really made me just take in the fact that this entire era of players that I really grew up loving and watching through from their start to finish. It was kind of the first era of players I got to watch from their start to finish are now like all retired basically. And it's brutal.
Apart from a couple that randomly now play for Newcastle, check out last week's episode to talk about that.
And, like technically Sydney Leroux's not retired, Kristen Press not retired, but like apart from a few, but it feels like, the era, we're on to the next.
Speaking of new eras, Chicago have announced they're getting a new stadium. About damn time.
Listen, I want to hear how Chicago fans feel about this because I've only seen the chatter online. So Chicago fans, drop a comment, let us know how you feel about it because let's just say what happened. Last Wednesday, Chicago Stars FC announced that Northwestern Medicine Field at Martin Stadium is the club's home for the next season. For those who don't know, Northwestern is a college just outside of Chicago. It's a 12,000 seat stadium, sits on the shore of Lake Michigan. They moved from SeatGeek Stadium, which had a 28,000 person capacity. There's a pretty notable last year. There was a controversy because there was Riot Fest scheduled and Chicago Stars had to move their game, so on and so forth. Anyways, I don't know. It seems to be a back and forth. Some Chicago fans like it and some fans are disappointed because of how far out of the way it is. So I want to know how Chicago fans feel about it.
So it feels like forever, but we actually have some playoff news. Some things have been guaranteed with a 2-0 win over Bay FC and the fact that Washington Spirit also won on Sunday. KC Current have officially clinched a top 4 seed for the playoffs, which means they will get a guaranteed home quarterfinal match in the games that are happening in the weekend of the 7th and 9th of November.
Ooh, good job, KC. First to clinch a home playoff. Listen, I don't envy whatever team goes in there. Notably, there's 7 games left in the regular season, and nobody is statistically eliminated yet. So we'll see what happens. Shall we rip through the score lines and then get into the meat of what we want to talk about, our game of the week, which is Orlando and Chicago?
Okay, so big win for Portland this weekend, taking down Racing Louisville 2-1.
North Carolina Courage and Utah Royals drew 1-1.
As previously mentioned, KC Current took down Bay FC 2-0.
And the game we're going to talk about, Chicago Stars beat Orlando Pride 5-2.
Washington Spirit took down Seattle Reign 2-0.
Gotham FC with a big victory. New York-LA rivalry is growing 3-1. A win for Gotham over Angel City.
And the rarity of rarities, the Houston Dash win this weekend, a 3-0 win over San Diego Wave.
Maybe we talk about Houston next week.
Next week we got to talk about Houston.
Maybe we'll just, who knows? All right, well, let's get into it, Allie, because 5-2 loss for Orlando at the hands of the Chicago Stars. This is Chicago's second win of the year. Ludmila got her 10th goal, which puts her in third in the Golden Boot race. But we have to talk about the defending champs because they are now winless in 7 straight league games. Their last win was June 13th over Bay FC. That was before international break.
So the big question is, what is going on with Orlando? Because they didn't lose that many players in the off-season that won the title. So, go on then. You know better than I do. What is going on? What is it that is causing Orlando so much problems?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of 2 things, in my opinion. And let's start with the first and the obvious one, and that is what everybody will point out when we look at the past 7 games and say that Barbara Banda is now out for the rest of the season. She suffered an injury in the draw versus Kansas City on August 16th. That was just their 3rd game back from international break. So technically they haven't had her for 4 or 5 games, depending on if you want to count that KC game. And she's been ruled out for the rest of the season. Obviously that doesn't completely explain it, but it is very notable. Barbara Banda is arguably one of the best attacking players, if not the best, depending on how you're looking at it in the NWSL. She adds an element to this team. And I think it's beyond just the goals that she can score. It is the element that she adds to this team in stretching the field. So this is kind of point number 1. It's of Barbara Banda, but I think it's also of what she adds to the field. Because if you look at their attacking 3, let's just look at their starting lineup against Chicago. And it's Marta, Simone Charlie, and then Hernandez on the right. none of them as attackers add that threat over the top. They are all players, in my opinion, that play better when they get the ball at their feet. So you've completely removed that element of your offense because you don't have it anymore. And then they become predictable. And I'll also say that, yes, it's the same club, but Adriana is missing. She went to Saudi Arabia.
I was going to say, we have to also look defensively because Adriana was huge.
Well, I was going to say she added an attacking element that's now gone as well, not just defensively.
And if you combine those two elements that are missing, it feels like a toothless Orlando.
Yeah, you look at what they played in the final of last year. So the final in 2024, they played kind of like a 4-2-3-1. And Barbara Banda was that one. And a 3 sitting behind Banda in like the attacking midfield was Marta in the center at the number 10. Adriana was out wide on the left wing, and Allie Watt was on that right wing. And so Adriana also provided that element of stretching the field. She's now playing in Saudi Arabia. So it's kind of like the same team minus her, but missing her is a big deal. So that's point number one. I think that they've moved from a multi-dimensional attack team to a single-dimensional attack team, and they are predictable. And I think that is one of the issues. The other issue is, look, you mentioned their defense, Allie. How many times last year did we point to Orlando Pride's defense?
Yeah, as a great thing. It was so tight. It was almost impenetrable. Like, Anna Morehouse had the command of her back four, as it was. And so clearly there's some sort of breakdown this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so it's the offense and it's the defense. So in summary, it's a combo. But I kind of did point number one of the offense, but point number two is the defense. And like you said, I think people will like remember Orlando as a high power, high scoring offensive team last year. But the reality is that they were a defensive team first. That's what won them the championship. And yes, they had an explosive offense, but they were locked down. They were tied for first in defense with 20 goals allowed all season, tied with Gotham in 26 matches played. That's 0.77 goals per game average. So well under one. But they only had the third highest scoring offense behind Kansas City and Washington. So they were a defensive first team, and it just hasn't gelled the same way this year. And is it a question of formation? Is it a question of personnel? I don't know. It just seems like they haven't found their best four. Last year, you knew who the starting four were. And this year, there's a shakeup in who's playing in what position along the back four. There's a shakeup in who's starting and who's getting the most minutes. And it just hasn't gelled. So it's really a story of both sides of this squad just kind of falling off a little bit. Their goal differential this year is just +4 because they can't score as much either. They're 24 goals scored in 20 games, so about 1.2 goals per game average, just over 1. And their defense has fallen off as well. It's still good, not as good. 20 goals allowed in 19 games, so just over 1 goal per game. So you look at it and it's really both, and it's just kind of all compounded, I think.
Makes me a little sad, I'm not gonna lie, because I was like so there for Orlando with how good their season was last season, and to see it fall off a bit is...
I think some people are asking, like, is it a coaching issue? I don't think it's a coaching issue. I do think that maybe we can change the formation. Maybe a 4-3-3 isn't the right call, but you can't play a 4-2-3-1 anymore because the one was always Barbara Banda, and if you don't have a player that can play that number 9 position with balls over the top, why are you going to play that formation? So I get it. I don't think it's that. It's just, some key players aren't there. One left for Saudi Arabia. One got hurt. Both of them kind of added that second dimension in the attack, and that's not there. And so now they're in a very precarious spot because they are certainly falling in the standings quite a bit. Since the end of international break, they're now sitting in 5th. They're just 3 points away from being in 9th place and missing out on a playoff spot. So they're fighting for their lives here. So they have time, but not much of it. And they're going to need to figure out how to become multidimensional again in the attack. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world. To Germany, and the Bundesliga is back with a bang. Big wins from Eintracht Frankfurt and Bayern Munich helped to start their season strong. However, Wolfsburg threw away a 3-goal lead to draw 3-3 with Hamburg.
Over to France, and as mentioned last week, newly promoted Lens versus PSG was the game to watch. The Parisian side held on to a 1-0 lead for 85 minutes until Sudi popped up with the equaliser, whereas Lyon beat Marseille 3-1 and Paris FC also won their opener 2-0.
And to Spain, Atletico Madrid are the winners of the Madrid Derby this year, beating Real Madrid 2-1. Real also had a player sent off in the 60th minute for their second yellow, meaning the start of their season just got a little tougher. Reigning champs Barcelona also won comfortably to remain on top of the league.
And to Scotland, in another derby this weekend, Rangers received the bragging rights as they beat Celtic 2-0 to top the league. Whereas in Edinburgh, it was Hearts who triumphed over Hibs with the same scoreline. Last year's champs Hibs are currently languishing in 5th after 4 games.
Over to the WSL that kicked off this weekend, Friday. Chelsea and Manchester City kicked off the season 2-1. Chelsea took it. We're not going to talk about that game, but maybe we should.
You're like, what? You're like, do we not?
Quick hit thought. Yeah, give us a quick hit thought.
Yeah, so I watched it. It wasn't the greatest opener, I'm not going to lie. Again, we need to talk about refereeing standards, because if a player is literally crying in pain and you don't stop the game and it's down to the opposition goalkeeper to call over the physio, then we have a problem.
I was going to say about the game specifically that the 2-1 scoreline does not actually paint a picture of what happened in this game, because Chelsea were extremely dominant. Manchester City had a hard time getting things going, and their one goal actually came from an own goal from Niamh Charles.
I completely disagree.
Really?
I think Chelsea were uber lucky, because I
guess that's fair. You can look at the statistics too at halftime, and City were pretty there.
I know you don't win a game with possession, but I honestly thought that Man City were really dominant. They just couldn't put away the opportunities, which Chelsea obviously did. But
I guess that's true. That's true. I do remember thinking that while I was watching.
Out of the two sides, I would say it was the team in light blue that were better performing, but Chelsea did Chelsea things and they tucked away those opportunities which Man City couldn't.
That's true. I remember thinking that while I was watching the game, so I don't know why I ended up saying that, but maybe I just literally, I don't know, it doesn't matter. But it's true, because I remember watching and I remember seeing the stats at halftime and thinking to myself, yeah, wow, I think that you could see a scoreline and think that Chelsea were dominant, but City, it even shows in the stats when you look deeper into them. City had more shots. They had more shots on target. I think at halftime they were even on every category, but Chelsea just were more efficient, frankly. But that's what Chelsea do, man. That's what Chelsea do. They are that efficient. And I was hoping we'd see a Sam Kerr appearance. We didn't. We got Fran Kirby on commentary, which was really fun.
Yeah, that was good. We actually found out why no Sam Kerr. So Bompasta was asked, obviously, because it had been hinted at. And she said, at 2-0, I'd considered it. But then when it went to 2-1, it was too much of a risk to put her into such a close game, because it would have been such a physical game. So she made the call to not put her in for that particular moment.
Chelsea, 3 shots on target all game, 2 goals. Efficiency at its finest. All right, let's move it along here. I don't even know where to begin, but I think maybe the fact that the next game that was played was Arsenal hosting London City Lionesses, in London City making their WSL debut, and we have to talk about it. It was much anticipated. Maybe we start with the fact that their jersey sponsor is Together, and so on the front of their jerseys it says everybody watches women's sports, and I absolutely love it. I forget what the exact, I don't know what to call it, data stat or whatever it was, but I think it's the first major club to have a women-owned organization as their marquee sponsor on their jersey.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. It's Alex Morgan's, right? Or she's part of it.
A combination of Alex Morgan, Sue Bird. Oh shoot, I think it might even be who owns Together.
Because I always get them and Re-Ink confused.
Yeah, no, it's different.
While you're figuring that out, just because, and this will lead nicely onto your next point, we was watching the game and my friend was like, oh, the London City jersey's really nice. Like, I might have to get that. And I went, yeah, it's Alex Morgan's company on the front. And they went, never mind.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's Alex Morgan, Sue Bird, Simone Manuel, who is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and Chloe Kim, who is a gold medal professional snowboarder. Anyways, let's get into it. I'm just going to start with this because even before the weekend kicked off, Allie, who used to be such a fan of London City, was getting...
No. Let's make this clear. I have never been a fan of London City because their history is Millwall, and if there's something I hate more than Chelsea and Tottenham, it's Millwall. So let's get that clear. I don't
understand what that means, but we'll go with it.
I have never been a fan of London City. Let's make that very clear.
All right, but we're going to start with this because on Thursday of last week, the day before the WSL kicks off, 2 days before Arsenal and London City play, I get a text from Mike, the editor of this podcast, to a little group chat with me and Allie, and it says, if London City sign Grace Giraud, the French international player, I'm going to be upset. Allie says, the more London City operate, the more I don't like it. I complained about Chelsea doing this too. I said, doing what specifically? Allie says, hoarding players. And I said, LOL, you mean just buying the good ones? Allie goes, plus the word is Giraud will do a season at London City and then be moved to Lyon. This has been your big sticking point with Michelle Kang for a while now.
So I'm consistent.
I said they've made themselves an attractive prospect for players. We're finally seeing a team promoted and looking like they won't get sent back down. Sounds like you both turned a corner into being salty about it. Which, for the record, it did seem, because we are always, tell me if I'm wrong about this, just like as a blanket term, we're always rooting for a team that just got promoted to not be sent right back down.
Correct.
Okay. And as a blanket term, we usually discuss the fact that those teams kind of are faced with two options. The first is to clean house and bring in some players who have played a long time in the WSL. And the second is to try to keep that core team together that won the championship, just bring in a couple of pieces. Would you agree with that too?
Also correct.
And we've seen it happen both ways, right?
Yeah.
And London City are just doing one of those things.
No, I get it. I do. And I get why you think I'm being salty, but I'm not. It's just I don't like teams buying players for the sake of it when you're like, are you actually going to use them?
Do you feel that way about Alyssa Thompson?
Yeah.
Going to Chelsea?
100%. I'm like, I don't get it. And it's like, and there are certain players, and we can talk about it with Arsenal, because there are certain players on Arsenal's bench I'm like, why have you not moved on? Lottie Wooper-Moy, for example, because we'll get into it when we talk about the game, but Leah Williamson is injured. You would think she would be the replacement. No, they went with a child. They went with a 17-year-old. Like, and I'm like, Wooper-Moy, I know you're an Arsenal fan, but move.
I mean, like that. I mean, that's a totally different conversation, right? Because there's so many reasons that could be happening. The first is that the same thing we discussed. You know, some players want the best competition in training to then grow as players. And then there's the other side where maybe Lottie Wooper-Moy is starting to think about a move. I don't know, but that's totally different. And I think that there's a difference between saying a team is like hoarding players and then just the structure of the WSL, which is the teams with the deepest pockets who want to invest the most go out and buy the players. And that's the WSL. That's what it is. That's what it's always been. That's football in England.
It is and it isn't, though. That's the thing. Like, it is and it isn't.
If Michelle Kang solely owned London City, would you be this upset? Or is it the fact that you feel like she's just moving players willy-nilly how she wants, whether it's to Lyon or London City or Washington, and she's just kind of doing whatever the heck she wants?
No, because like I said, I had the same issue with Chelsea. It's, I mean, I do think there is definitely, I will see after the end of this year if certain players do stay at London City or if they suddenly get a move. Because the player we're talking about there was at PSG, which is Lyon's greatest rivals in the French league. You take her out. Now, PSG are not going to sell her directly to their rivals.
Right. But they'll sell it to a WSL club.
But they'll sell it to a WSL club, which, happens to be owned by the same person that owns their biggest rivals, who can then just move her to Lyon when she feels like it during a transfer window. You know, there is a reason why she had to sell Seattle Reign, because she couldn't own...
Conflict of interest,
She couldn't own two. So yeah, there's just something about it I don't like.
I do think we might be on the verge of seeing some kind of rules starting to be enacted where it's like, okay, if you own multiple clubs in different leagues, then these are the rules around transferring players between your clubs, from one of your clubs to another club. I don't think you're wrong about that. But let's get into the game, because at the end of the day, it was Arsenal who took it 4-1. I predicted Arsenal. You predicted a draw. Although weirdly, on the flip side, I did predict London City will finish in the top 4 and you did not. So I have faith in them in the long run. You had faith in them in the short run. Let's get into this game, Allie.
Yeah, so this game started off, it was very cagey, as you expect. First game of the season for these teams. It was very cagey. And then I thought they started well. I'd say for the first 20 minutes, London City started really well, and they were looking like the caliber of players that they are, is the honest answer. I thought they were, Aslani was looking sharp, Alana Kennedy was looking sharp, Katie Zellum was doing bits in the midfield. I will say I thought Nikita Paris was off pace. I was a bit like, it was a constant thing. I was watching with a bunch of football fans, and we all sat there going, who was that to? And then we were like, oh, it was Nikita, but she was...
Now, do you agree with me from last week that Beth Mead would start over Nikita Paris if she moved to London City?
They play very different roles, so no.
We're getting closer. We're getting closer.
We're still getting closer. But I was like, it's going to take her a minute. So, yeah. And then the penalty happened. And again, it's one of those things. It was youthful. It was Katie Reid, who's, sorry, apologies, is 18, not 17. She's just turned 18. And it was a youthful error, man. It happens. It was a challenge. It was a last-ditch challenge. Aslani is smart enough to know that if she rolls one way, it's a penalty. If she rolls another way, it's a free kick. So it was what it was.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But then London City go up 1-0, and I think very fitting that Aslani, the captain, scored the first ever WSL goal for London City. We have to kind of applaud that moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They did a little bit of the head game thing where the ball gets given to Nikita and then suddenly she gives it back to Aslani, and, stone cold penalty, stone cold, execution. You cannot fault it. You absolutely cannot fault it. And they're riding high and they're doing well. And then Olivia Smith happens.
Talk about a youngster as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What a wonder goal. Absolutely laces through it. To have the balls to, shoot from that distance as well.
Yeah, for real. For those who don't know, she's a Canadian professional soccer player. She plays on the national team. She joined Arsenal this past year. I believe she was $1 million player. Actually, she was the first. She was actually the first £1 million women's football signing, which feels weird, but it's true. 21 years old and kind of like a prodigy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolute banger. You cannot complain at that one. It was just wonderful. And it's 1-1, and that changes absolutely everything.
Talk to me about what you feel like you saw at London City start to finish, and then same for Arsenal start to finish. Because I feel like they were almost on opposite trajectories, in my opinion, where it's London City started strong, finished weak, and Arsenal were the opposite.
Yeah, it was one of those things for me that I felt like London City just ran out of steam.
Yeah.
They just didn't know how to finish a game out. Literally, again, we did the thing that we always say. I was like, oh, if they concede here just before half-time, that's going to be a very dangerous thing. And that's what happened.
Who else? The clutch player herself, Chloe Kelly.
Yeah, exactly. Chloe Kelly, squeezes a goal through, and and then it was game over.
But I'd agree. I think London City kind of folded. There wasn't much there in the second half, and then when Arsenal put 2 away, in the span of a minute, basically back to back in the second half, it was really over. That was in the end. That was towards the end, but at that point, it had felt over, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was donezo. Look, I don't think it was a convincing game for either team, I'm going to be honest. I know it's weird to say that for a 4-1 victory, but Arsenal did look shaky, but it's the first game of the season. Everybody looks shaky.
Yeah, that's true. It takes a moment to find mid-season form. That's why they call it mid-season form. All right, let's talk about the weekend as a whole, Allie, because it was kickoff weekend, tons of games, and I know you have some things to say about the start of the WSL this year.
I have so many things to say, and everybody's going to be like, you're complaining again, but yes, I am. First off, the big thing that seems to be coming out is the lowest attendance for an opening weekend for everyone bar Manchester United.
Lowest attendance for opening weekend since
I think they said the 21-22 season.
Okay.
So the lowest since the Euros boom.
Here's my take though. Like, you look at the NWSL and there are dips also. It's just like put very simply, progress isn't linear. So I think you can look at that and be worried, or you can look at it and be like, okay, progress isn't linear, but we're still in progress. And that's kind of how I see it.
Like, no, I completely get that. I completely understand that. I do think that we're going to see it happen. Some people, regarding the Arsenal one, because the Arsenal one was 35,000, which is not to be sniffed at all. 35,000
not at all
is a very good thing. But when they're getting last season 45, 48, 50,000, it's a 15,000 drop. As somebody pointed out, this is the first season that they're playing every single home game at the main stadium.
At the Emirates
in the league, which means that a lot of neutrals and a lot of like fans of other teams that would have gone for the day out aren't going, because there's plenty of opportunities to go to the Emirates. It's not like where it's like there's 3 games a season.
I would totally agree with that. Yeah, I think it's like you sacrifice the like one-time big attendance for a steadier, consistent, higher average attendance. Yeah.
So I completely get that. The thing for me, I do think these 12 o'clock kickoffs are going to kill attendance.
I totally agree with
because
that.
Me and Mike messaged me on Saturday night being like, I'm going to Brighton, Aston Villa. Mike lives in the north of the country, and he said, I have to get up at stupid o'clock for this. I'm barely going to make it because of, we saw strikes in London transport. Like, I was staying over in London, and to be honest, that's the only reason I made my game. Like,
yeah.
It's going to be either I have to smile nicely at friends to sleep on their sofa, or it's going to be a lot of 4 a.m. start times for.
Yeah. Same for viewership. We talked about this last week. Like, for us in the US too, who want to watch, usually the 12 p.m. start times were like the first game of the day. And then there were some later on. And so like on the East Coast of the US, that's a 7 a.m. or a 7:30 if it's 12:30 for you. On the West Coast, it's a 4 or 4:30 a.m. And hey, even if you're on the East Coast, like a 7 a.m. start on a Saturday, hey, like you're really only going to watch that if you're up. That's a lot to get up for on a Saturday. So it's going to dip in viewership as well.
Speaking of coverage, this has been my big one, because the BBC had the Arsenal London City game, and normally I love their coverage. Normally they're the ones I go to. This was some of the worst coverage I have ever seen from a mainstream broadcaster. They are clearly working some stuff out, and they've clearly thrown the spaghetti at the wall and seen what sticks. And I hope that none of what they tried this time sticks. So the big one, and even journalists hated this one, was they interviewed the London City Lioness manager in the middle of the game.
That's very US. That's very
that
US.
was literally my thing. Me and my friend, when we watched it, went, well, this is so American, it's untrue.
It's very American. But I'll tell you, everybody over here hates it too.
Good, because it's stupid. Because he needs to be focusing, because the game is happening. He needs to be focusing on his team and what his team's doing. He doesn't need to be talking to the commentators, the BBC commentators, about how he thinks the game's going 24 minutes in when his team are trying to play the current European champions. So
I agree.
Everybody hated that. They then had found some fans in the stadium and got them to ask the presenters questions. And the reason I don't like that is because, again, it's aiming it at children. It's aiming it at kids. And it's that inspiration versus...
Yeah. It's what we were talking about last week, where it's like we're past the moment where like women's soccer is just an inspirational tool for young girls. women's soccer is a business that you can make money off of, and it's for everybody. And stop aiming it at families and young children as an inspirational tool. It's great if it works for them like that, but stop marketing it like that.
And that's what this felt like. The questions didn't add anything to it. It was, no, nobody liked that. The camera work, this is my last point, the camera work. They kept panning to the crowd at crucial moments of the game. I don't need to see Arsenal fans when Arsenal are on the attack. I want to watch the attack.
It's funny because I do feel like, so this is Newco, who owns the WSL and the WSL2 now. And Newco is comprised of Canadians and, in other words, North Americans, and we kind of do sports a certain way. And it's been very clear for a couple of years now since Newco took over that a lot of the changes that are being made are being deemed by all of the English as North American and, quote, we hate it.
Yes, we do. Because I think the problem is, and I don't even think it's the American thing, and this is a thing, and we'll come on to it for my other point for the WSL. And I'm literally writing an article about this, so when I've done it, I will post it, which is, my article is it time that the WSL grows up? Or is it time that the women's football grows up? And by that, I mean, we need to stop this pandering and making it a palatable thing for kids, families and children. Because yes, it's great that they can go, and it's great that they have this safer version of football than the men's game, which can be quite vile and brutal in terms of the fan culture and everything else. But at the end of the day, what we're here for is a game of football. Not every football match needs a circus attached to it. And that's what it feels like. It feels like, this is what I'm saying about new ideas and sticking. I'm like, do you know what we really want? We want consistent camera work that doesn't feel like we're on a boat and feel seasick. We want some good analysis, and we want to watch the game. That's all we want. We don't need this halftime Super Bowl show.
You don't want to make a production of it.
No, because if you're not doing it, and I don't want to compare it to the men's game, but if you're not doing it for the men, why do we need it? You watch the BBC coverage of a men's game, it's literally, you have your pundits, you have your analysis, you have the game, you have half-time, you have your pundits, your analysis, you have the second half. It ends, you have your pundits and analysis. That's what we want.
Any final points on WSL opening weekend before we head into what Allie has no idea I'm about to say this? Breaking news from the NWSL as we're recording that we're going to get into because it's huge.
We are going to, but very quickly, because it leads into the points I've just said. We're seeing a lot more clubs closing down the meeting of players after matches. West Ham have literally just announced that they're now going to do a ballot, very similar to Chelsea, so certain fans will meet certain players and do it that way. We've seen that Arsenal have put a stop to it, Man United have put a stop to it, Man City have been doing a ballot for years, and it's annoyed a lot of people. And I get it, but also I'm also like, build a bridge and get over it. Because again, your ticket entitles you to a 90+ minute football match.
All right, final points on the WSL opening weekend. I think for me, it's just I want us to do very quick hits on these few scorelines. First topic, Grace Clinton actually did cross the divide. Allie, will United fans ever forgive her?
Yes, because Jess Park is a better part of the deal.
I don't think it matters to them. I don't think they'll ever forgive her. Okay, Tottenham beat West Ham 1-0. Both of us picked West Ham in that game. Tottenham looked down and out last season. Does this bode well for Tottenham, or is it just a blip?
It was a blip because both teams weren't great, but it was a penalty from, a poor thing. It wasn't from open play. Everton will be a bigger test for them.
Speaking of Everton, 4-1 win over Liverpool. I had picked Liverpool for that game. You picked Everton. Why did you pick Everton, and why do you think you were right?
Because Everton recruited well, Liverpool did not. And in all of the Mersey derbies that have been at Anfield, Everton have won. That's now 6 out of 6.
And the final, Brighton and Aston Villa tied 0-0. Now, we both picked Brighton, but I'm not surprised by the scoreline here. I think I had higher hopes for Aston Villa coming into this season because I'm stupid that way. Because for some reason, for the past 3 years, I always have high hopes for Aston Villa. But this time, my high hopes were not that high. They were just that they're not going to be in the bottom 3. Because they had such a strong end to the season, they seem to be more stable right now. I still think Brighton's a better side. Thoughts on this 0-0 draw?
Again, I think it's open day nerves. It's like, everybody's cagey. I don't think you can read too much into it either. I don't, it's as simple as that. Come back to us at the end of October and we all have a better picture.
Fair enough. All right, let's get into the NWSL breaking news that dropped. It was announced, and I believe it was Tamara Griffin of The Athletic. Shout out to her, who I was actually texting her about this topic, which is hilarious. Shout out to her for breaking this story. Bay FC head coach Albertin Montoya will step down at the end of the 2025 season. The club just announced. Kay Cossington, who serves as the CEO of the football group, the Bay Collective, is going to be stepping into the sporting role at Bay FC and will lead the search for the next manager. Look, I haven't gotten to read this article because it dropped. We've been talking since this article dropped, but I think the more important thing is to get into kind of talking about this, which is my reaction is that I'm absolutely 0% surprised. Bay FC has lost 4 out of the last 5 games. In that 5th game, they drew. After a great inaugural season, there hasn't really been a heart and soul of the team. There doesn't seem to be a direction or chemistry, and it very simply feels like they haven't improved at all this season. If anything, they lost key players. They weren't able to add that many. They recruited so well out of college, but they haven't been able to manage those players correctly either for them to contribute how they should be contributing, because I think some of the best talent out of college went to Bay FC. They need an injection of energy. They need a better midfield, and it feels like there haven't been new things tried by Albertin in a long time. And it's just been the same thing over and over, expecting new results. And there just seems to be this undercurrent of frustration with players, which is understandable with the season, but it's also, I think, an indication of something being off, because we've seen teams that have had worse years statistically and worse years in the standings, but the vibe is better in the locker room. And I think when you get an inside look at that, which like I've seen by being at those press conferences, it's just kind of like an indication that something's off. So I'm not entirely surprised, to be totally honest with you. I'm curious where this search will lead them as well.
No, to be honest, I think it's actually good that they've announced that intent now, because it at least gives Bay fans a good idea of where they're going. That the owners are saying we're not settling for this mediocrity that has sort of rotted in. To be honest, because I did a beginning of the season deep dive, and I had high hopes for Bay, and they have not lived up to them.
Matt Potter is the sporting director for Bay FC, and he is a former head coach of the Kansas City Current. I don't know. I'm curious to see if anything happens there.
But I like this. I like the idea of announcing it now rather than it being this mad scramble at the end of the season. So I think it's good, it's smart, it means that they do have some ambition. We shall see.
Yeah, I hope this doesn't feel like a throwaway season to the players either. We can't really end this without talking about the fact that there were allegations against Albertin Montoya, that the league did conduct an investigation and nothing was found, but there were a lot of notable players who left Bay FC. And, the coaching staff as a whole faced a formal NWSL review because of the allegations made by former players and I think former people who worked in that workplace but weren't players of a, quote, toxic environment. So we have to note that as well. The investigation came up with nothing, but we have to say that those allegations were made by multiple people leaving Bay FC. I think that the club's been very forthright with saying that's not why this is. This is, performance-based, but it has to be noted. All right. That was fun. Some breaking news. We love it. All right. And that's it for us this week here at the Women's Soccer Show.
Make sure you check out our Patreon site next week. We'll be back with our News in 10. There will also be another episode of The Other 8 where me and Mike will break down the first 2 weeks of the WSL. And as ever, it will cost you the price of a cup of coffee a month, and it helps us keep this wonderful show going. So we do thank our Patreons because we do owe you so much.
All right. Season 8, already great. This has been episode 2. We'll catch you next week, next Wednesday, to talk about it all again. And all of the new things that came out, I'm sure there will be plenty. And that's it for us today. And for the Women's Soccer Show, I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.